into the exchanges themselves. Why is Gary Gensler punting on the Bitcoin ETF so far? Because he's concerned about fraud and manipulation, and he wants cover. He wants more regulation of the Bitcoin exchanges. This is selling Bitcoin to grandma. They're not going to approve that unless indications they've got Bitcoin going from 66,000 to 33,000 in 2 months. That does not help anybody's case for a Bitcoin ETF. He's going to punt in August on the Van Eck one, again down the road to have more time to evaluate.
All right, so you heard it here first. Great discussion. And before we go, I just want everybody's thoughts here, as this is a historic week for colleges and for college sports. The NCAA is rushing to offer a proposal to allow athletes in all 50 states to profit from their name, image, and likeness as soon as July 1st without forfeiting their eligibility to play. It comes just days ahead of laws set to take effect across the country that would make it legal for college athletes to make money. And don't forget, the Supreme Court sided with student athletes last week, ruling that the NCAA could provide them with unlimited education-related compensation. So quickly, very curious about how everybody feels about this one, even though, Bob, I'm not sure there's any investment implications. So give us your societal one.
We take England over Germany.
Well, look, this is not necessarily about college sports. The NCAA is the only one against this, and they're against it because they're afraid of losing control, and the whole thing is going to turn into a job to replace you. And it is. What it really is about
John heard me fucking screaming at the TV.
What do you see next? High school kids are going to want to monetize.
I mean, that game yesterday was the final.
You're going to have third
If it was up to
graders
me.
monetizing their NFTs because they're TikTok stars. Monetization of everything is where this is going. I think it's
I
kind
don't
of
even care how many
appalling,
goals
but
are
you
scored.
can see
Just
the trend
the
here,
type
and
of
even the
goals that were
NCAA
scored were just unbelievable.
I think they'll be very successful with their efforts to monetize their brand, because just look at the following they have on social media. Some of these NCAA players, like for example Jordan Bohannon, a basketball player at University of Iowa, he has more followers on social media than a lot of the NFL players. So I think they're ready to go, and they have that platform already that they're using on social media.
That's a great point. It's actually the same point John Fort was making earlier. We were just kind of chatting about this. Because Michael, I need everybody to take on this issue. I changed my own mind. One day I think it's great, the next day I think it's terrible. What did Yoshikami say?
Told the girl I was dating that beware, because one of these days I'm going to be moving out of here. And sure enough, 6 months later, I sold my car, and sold everything, and in 3 days I'm moving to Germany.
Illegal, or at least
Said,
reduce
"See you
illegal
later."
payoffs under the table, and for companies like Coca-Cola, McDonald's,
Time is my
Pepsi,
goals.
these kind of companies do
Right.
all
Oh,
over these athletes. And Bob's right, we could very well have a poster child in third grade as the next LeBron James.
No, you were young and you didn't stay with that girl forever. What? Right? I knew everything though.
I don't believe that you're not still with her.
Right? I was, what was I, 17 and knew everything.
And then I got a little older, something happened, and I forgot it all.
I realized I knew everything about fuck all nothing.
100% agree with that. Been there, am there.
Oh, here comes a pot.
I just imagine what would happen if I would have learned this shit 15 fucking years ago.
Oh, broke my account because I'm too arrogant.
In 2012, after I graduated high school, I looked up YouTube videos and I tried to learn day trading. And I said, this is fucking impossible. I don't have 10 grand to spend on a course. And I guess it kind of comes full circle.
Yo, I would have taken out an extra student loan.
Yeah, student loans. People buy worse things with student loans.
Yeah, I would have gave up because I would have been arrogant and tried to just balls to the wallet, and then I wouldn't have wanted to come back to it later.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Now. That was a bearish candle.
I took that 188. What do you think about that, John?
Nice, nice.
I didn't realize the Dow was down.
Yeah, the indexes have been moving strangely.
What we got going on over here?
I only took one though, I wasn't as confident.
So you make it harder to manage.
Well, if it keeps going, I'm gonna be in profit no matter what, so. I got you. Then now I got you in my head. Don't let it run against you. I gotta break even.
Yep.
You know, I'm looking forward to utilizing the ideas that we talked about this morning, stop loss and loot, and unfortunately just not moving too much today.
What do you mean? It's like the same as the way John trades, though, right? The stock.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's just something that I've personally been struggling with. It's like one thing at a time, and then I find something new that I'm struggling with until I fix that, and then on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's the only way I was able to learn, though. Like, I was breaking it down. John encouraged me to do it like that, like one at a time, one or two at a time.
One just leads to two. It's a step before the next. One isn't something that one would want to end at, and stick with. It's a step before the next, basically.
Yeah, like there's no end game.
Well, three is, yeah, because then you just increase the quantity past three, but
I meant in terms of learning, with trading.
Yeah, we meant like
Okay, something to learn.
We meant like steps.
yeah, and scaling though, there's steps.
Yeah, I really feel like you shouldn't trade until you have enough for three.
Yeah.
Like live, like one is impossible, two is difficult, and three is your sweet spot.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because then you're just sitting there holding your one at the top, and you're like, when do I get rid of this thing? I didn't take any profit.
Yeah. And
Yeah, exactly. And you're freaking out the whole way down.
with it, yeah, exactly.
And it's like when you're right. When you buy one, you set yourself up to be right for a little bit and then wrong in the end, because it comes back to get you.
Like I anticipate losing my first one to basically a commission cover to cover the other two, and then my other two are profit. My one covers my trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've taken 2 or 3 trades today, 3 MNQ each, and that's what I did. I took one off right away, the pay just for the commissions, and had my other 2 still, so that was good.
Like 1.5 to 3 points is what I like that first one. And 3 points is only was really moving. They typically come off at 1.5.
What's going on, guys? Took this on
Yo.
Took this on MNQ on that too. It's okay.
You had your thank you then?
I only have 3 micros.
Oh, okay.
It's not really a problem. That was first trade.
Appreciate it, Dave. There you go.
Yeah. I was trying to remove like an old MNQ from my watch list, and it popped it into my chart, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming off a right shoulder right now, breaking the yellow support we were watching for the new rising wedge.
Game's over.
You got more?
Unfortunately.
Is it actually over, or is it just like 3-0 now?
No, it's done. Germany had such a crappy team this year.
Were they out of the whole thing?
Yeah, it was the knockout stages, quarterfinals. England play Italy, I think.
Okay. When's that? Tomorrow?
Well, actually, Italy have to play first in the quarterfinals, but I'm assuming they're going to win. I think it's Friday.
Okay.
AMD back at 90 pretty much. NVIDIA reaching 77 on the RSI.
I have a 4x4.
Hey John, I should move that to that flag, right?
Hello, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a flag.
Because it might want to D-leg.
You
Essentially,
mean like a cipher?
well, no, it would be normal. B point wouldn't be too high. It's an H right now, so come up for the D-leg or go down to finish the ABCD. Regardless, it stays within the two purple lines, which are symmetrical triangle lines.
Oh, we've seen this, eh? At the top of a falling wedge, it makes a symmetrical triangle leaving the side.
Yep, we have.
This wouldn't be a trend-defining move. Just a fake out.
Not necessarily a trend-defining move. Like you can adjust the previous support to match this trend, but the real trend is going to be these two lows down here.
It's 500% overnight.
That makes
It
sense.
takes a long time to build out the infrastructure to do that, and that's why you see predictions
And that's
that
only important
this
because
shortage
it's
can last for
impossible for this
years
one to be
into the
important
future
before
here.
that
It's
one.
not going to be solved by, you know, the next big buying surge, which will be.
We're at the 188
so,
fit channel.
you know, people are just going to basically have to get by with what they have.
I got a
for now.
little
It's
bit
gonna
to go to
be
mine. We just
something
rallied
that
up to
affects shooting
161.
ranges, but
Yeah.
probably something that positively affects both ammo manufacturers and gun manufacturers going forward.
Stephen Gutowski of The Reload, thank you for joining us to explain this trend. We really appreciate it. That does it for the exchange. I'll see you on Power Lunch right after this with Eamon Javers and former CIA Director David Petraeus. Don't go anywhere.
And did make that D-leg.
Looks like the energy stocks
So
are
uh,
looking possibly worth buying. We have Chevron, Duke
and you got the
Energy,
coastal 161 or higher. It may be trying to make a
Dominion, Con Ed. Con Ed is
You think we'll make a new high?
showing
It's possible, maybe you
oversold.
hit the 161, yeah, that
I
was
think
the
I'm gonna
original
swing a little bit of Con
target.
Ed.
That took maybe 8 points out of the home play with 2.
The yellow line we've been watching.
I thought that spike in the middle was a B point. Is that the one that you're talking about?
The spike in the middle. There's a smaller bearish mark pattern right here.
Okay. That's what I was looking at when I saw the cipher.
Here. Yeah, well the B point would have to be like here for it to be a cipher.
No, the spike being the B point to a cipher. Yeah.
Maybe it's a little too high.
Okay.
I think it would be more set up to be like something like a crab, with it has an elongated D-leg. Roby looking at the Russell there, yeah. Been pretty volatile.
Welcome to Power Lunch, everybody. I'm Kelly Evans along with Eamon Javers in today for Tyler Matheson. And topping the hour, the mega cap tech trade. The focus is back on growth as Facebook joins the $1 trillion club. The stock's worth buying even as valuations climb.
And cyber Cold War, the U.S. and Russia talked tough on cybercrime in Geneva, but was any real progress actually made? Former CIA Director David Petraeus and the co-founder of CrowdStrike will take us inside the battle, a fight that's costing corporate America billions of dollars.
Yeah, and a post-pandemic flight plan. United makes its largest aircraft purchase ever, a big bet on a resurgence in air travel. Power Lunch starts right now. And here's where the markets stand midday. Dow's up about 32 points. S&P and Nasdaq hitting intraday highs, but off of those levels. Nasdaq still up 0.2%. And bank stocks had been leading the way, losing a little steam this afternoon. Morgan Stanley still 3.5% higher. JP Morgan's now negative. All of this after releasing their capital plans yesterday. And the home builders are up after S&P Case-Shiller said home prices rose more than 14% year-on-year nationally in April. You can see, though, the gains about 1 to 2%. David?
And as the Nasdaq continues to hit those record highs nearly every day, big tech once again leading the market with Facebook topping $1 trillion valuation. Mark Zuckerberg is speaking right now, this very moment, and Julia Boorstin is watching that and will bring us any news. But first, let's start with the return of growth and the queen of growth, Cathie Wood. Kate Rooney is on next.
Hey, Eamon, growth really is the name of the game for Cathie Wood and her ARK Invest funds. Those have been staging a comeback over the past 6 weeks. All of her ETFs are off of those May lows, now positive for the year, thanks to bounces in names like Tesla and Coinbase. Those are two of her top holdings, and some biotech stocks in ARK's portfolio leading the way this week. We had Intellia Therapeutics surging after that company announced positive results from a phase 1 study of a gene editing treatment along with its partner Regeneron. That's another Cathie Wood stock. And Wood has really gone on a buying spree in another name, Kratos. This is a defense and security company that specializes in drones. It works with the U.S. military as well. And it is now the 4th largest holding in ARKQ. That is the firm's autonomous tech and robotics ETF. All in, ARK owns about 7% of the company's outstanding shares. ARK has been a buyer for almost half of the days this month. And for ARK's next big bet, guys, a Bitcoin ETF. Wood has been a longtime crypto bull. That's gained her some street cred with Reddit and other social media investors. But until now, it's mostly been through proxies like Coinbase and Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust. But there is a long line here. There are now 8 companies total waiting for SEC approval for a similar investment vehicle. Guys, back to you.
Kate Rooney, thank you very much. Now, speaking of growth stocks, the $1 Trillion Club adding a new name to its friend list. Facebook closing above $1 trillion in market cap for the first time yesterday, joining Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet, all with that 12-figure valuation. But can the market keep sustaining these valuations for much longer? Joining us now is Greg Branch. He's Managing Director at Veritas Financial Group. Greg, what do you think? Is it time to double down on big tech?
Yeah, look, I think all the factors are working in big tech's favor right now. Look, there were 3 headwinds that we were looking at 6 weeks ago. Right? The first is, what was the interest rate environment going to be? Because as we know, a rising rate environment is significantly more harmful for tech and growth. The second was, what is the true earnings power of these companies? What was COVID-related bump versus what is the long-term secular growth story for these companies? And I think we're in the midst of proving that. I think as we continue to see record earnings, I think as we continue to see record growth rates, we saw digital advertising come in with 30% plus compound annual growth. We saw cloud come in, many of those companies at 50%. So we're in the midst of proving that the experience we had with them last year was not just COVID related, but they were in the midst of some secular stories that are worth paying attention to.
Greg, you talk about all those business factors that are at foot here, right? And sort of what the earnings are going to be, what the pandemic did for these tech stocks. But what about the Washington factor? I'm a Washington guy, and I always look at the overhang of regulation and sort of the populist anger at some of these companies that we're seeing in Washington. How do you factor that in as an analyst looking at how these companies might perform?
Yeah, I don't think that headwind has been resolved. I look at that as more postponed, because you're exactly right. I think the public furor has contributed to what we'll see is a second round and maybe a third round of the states coming back and the FTC coming back. But the judicial branch has put a line in the sand that anecdotal evidence that diatribes from elected officials are not enough to try and establish monopoly power or anti-competitive behavior, which is really difficult to establish when we're talking about services that are free to consumers in many cases. And so I think big tech breathed a sigh of relief yesterday. I think the investors breathed a sigh of relief, and I think we've postponed resolution of this headwind into further months.
Greg, what about Lina Khan at the FTC, and is this somebody who can change the rules of the game that are currently being applied?
Not if the judiciary doesn't cooperate
Triangle's one of the most common consolidation
in a unified way. But again, I think we need to examine what is the nature of anti-competitive and what will get the judicial branch to agree that something is anti-competitive, particularly where we're not charging consumers. And so as long as we're staving off the answer to that, we're going to focus on the fundamentals of these companies, which are resoundingly good. There are secular growth stories here that are underappreciated and not in the valuation of the stocks. Whether that's the phone business at Zoom, whether that's e-commerce at Facebook and their take rates and their license fees, they're not properly counted in, I think, whether it's the cloud businesses, there are strong secular growth stories here.
with it being.
Now we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the broadcast, but I wonder about Zoom fatigue, right? As everything is opening up again and people are going back to work, I think you worry about sort of screen fatigue overall. There's only so much time you can spend looking at your laptop and your phone and all your devices and talking to Alexa at home, working in your living room as so many white-collar workers have been. Where is the edge of the cliff in terms of Zoom fatigue and screen fatigue overall as people get back into their real life and they go to the beach and they do things on July 4th and all that stuff that we've been waiting so long to actually be able to do?
Right. This is a pertinent argument when we talk about the digital advertising cycle as well. There is no doubt that we
Huge
saw
divergence on the 1 hour,
pandemic-induced engagement
lower RSI,
last year. But what we're finding is that although user growth is plateauing, engagement is actually
overbought
remaining persistent.
on the 30-minute.
So while I do think that the pendulum will swing
also
back
a
bit,
bearish
what we're finding
divergence
is that
once
people have
again.
incorporated this into
1
their
hour,
new daily lives. That the
another
engagement
big
that
divergence.
they are
So
incorporating
all
into
of the
everyday
longer
tasks like
time frames
shopping,
were
checking things
overbought
online,
on
that
the
makes
4 hour.
sense. So we haven't seen the actual engagement.
It doesn't actually
plateau in
look
ways
like
that I
there's
think
necessarily a
was
bearish
expected.
divergence,
I like that,
but
our new
it's
daily lives, sort of
80 on the
new
RSI,
normal.
so
Thanks very much,
it's
Greg
more
Branch, for
than
that. And now we've got
overbought
that
at
news
this
alert
point.
that we were talking about, and Julie Borston is in LA. with
1
more
day
on
on the
Julie.
daily chart. We're also overbought,
Facebook
which
is
doesn't
announcing
happen that
Bulletin.
often.
This
You'll
is a
see
new
we've
tool
only
for
reached
journalists
above
to send out
70
newsletters
during
and
the
allow
past
people to either
year.
pay or they could do it as a free
1,
version. This is
2,
going to live
3
outside
times,
of Facebook.
and it
So
only
you'll have to
lasted
go to
for
bulletin.com,
a couple of days per before there was a crash. You'll see here we have a overbought RSI, we have a small pullback. Here we have a more overbought RSI, we have a larger pullback, and now we're at a medium-sized overbought RSI, and we could have a pullback somewhere between 350 to 330. It probably won't be that high of a pullback, but you never know. But regardless, I do think there will be a pullback.
Individual journalists to monetize their fan base, have a way to go directly to the people who want to read their content. This is something that Mark Zuckerberg has talked about a lot, and I think it's really interesting that even though this will be integrated into Facebook, they're also creating a website for this that will live outside of Facebook. Guys, back over to you.
This is very interesting. We were just talking about this, Eamon, the newsletter economy, Substack. I mean, it's not like we can check on the trading price, but Facebook, every time, anything you can do, we can do better. I'm surprised they're only